A standard animated film is around 90 minutes long. That means it has an average of 130,000 frames. Now, imagine drawing every single one of those frames. Yep, it takes a really long time. That's why professional animators had to come up with ways to speed up the process, using 2D compositing and 3D software to automatize it and make it a bit less manual. We've compiled all these modern techniques into one video, just so you don't have to waste your precious time. You'll speed up your workflow and level up your animated films with just 3 things.
Hi everyone, I'm Fran, and today I'm going to talk about 3 key pillars of modern 2D animation that I think every animator should know. First, I'll quickly explain the basics for you to understand the foundation of it, and then I'll go through more complex scenarios, most of them from my own work made in After Effects. Let's get started.
As you can see in this example from One Piece, when Luffy is running or punching, if you pay attention, the animators just drew a few frames of the action and then repeated the sequence over time, creating a loop. They didn't draw every single frame of the shot. This works very well for quick or repetitive actions, as the viewer understands what the character is doing straight away, without wasting time and effort drawing every single frame of the sequence. This can also be very useful for hair animation or any element with constant motion, like the clothes from Goku and C-17 in these clips from Dragon Ball. Okay, so now I'll show you a very quick and easy way to create loops using Photoshop and After Effects. I normally use Photoshop because I'm more familiar with it, but you can use any drawing software really. Open Photoshop and go to Window Timeline.
And click on Create Video Timeline.
Now set up the FPS rate to the desired number, in this case 12 FPS. And go to Layer, Video Layers, and then New Blank Video Layer. You can now draw anything you want, and when you go to the next frame, it'll be blank. This allows you to draw a sequence of frames that in the end will become an animation. Let's go into detail. I'm working on a short film where I've got a few characters running. On this one, for example, I started drawing an outline version using a reference run cycle that I found on the internet. I used this as a guide to add some color to each frame, but then I removed the outline at the end, as it wasn't needed for the style of the film. So for this particular animation, I needed to draw 12 frames. I separated the body parts into different layers to make the painting process a bit easier, so if I need to erase part of the trousers, it won't affect the leg or the shirt, so I can concentrate on each body part at a time without wasting time swapping the colors of the brush or having the pressure to paint accurately. I've also used the paint bucket tool for large shapes to speed up the process a bit. Basically, I've kept it very simple in Photoshop, using the tools that I know best, and that allow me to work fast, and then I can add all the extra details like lights, shadows or camera movement in After Effects. Once the loop is done, just export it as a PSD image sequence, then import it into After Effects.
Click on the Photoshop sequence box if it's not ticked,
and click on the Interpret Footage icon and make sure the frame rate is correct. In this case, I need to change it to 12.
Create a new composition and drag the animation into the timeline.
Then time remap it. Click on the stopwatch and select Property Loop Out.
Extend the endpoint of the layer to the end of the composition.
If you feel it's too slow, you can always adjust the keyframes. Now you just add a background and there you go. Your running character is done by drawing only 12 frames, instead of drawing every single frame of the shot. We'll talk about backgrounds later, but now I can show you a few extra details that you can add in After Effects quite easily. The first thing missing here is the shadow projected on the floor. Just duplicate your composition and then apply a CC slant effect. And just by playing with the slant and height parameters, you'll get a really good result. Maybe the floor one as well a bit. Then you add a fill to make it black. You can also add any blur effect. In this case, I'll add a camera lens blur. Maybe change it to 15. Yeah, that's fine. And turn the opacity down a little bit. Okay, what else? Let's say the light comes from the right side. We can always add some kind of glow as well, coming from the right. Right-click on the composition and then go to Layer Styles and click on Inner Shadow. There's a inner glow effect, but I normally use Inner Shadow because you can change the angle and it works better for me, I think. change the blend mode to lighten or screen. The color in this case can be white or can have a subtle orange tone. And I just play with the different parameters like angle, distance, the opacity of course, and that's it. A different way to add lights would be using the matte layers as well. So you could create a new shape, let's say white with a little bit of orange like before. Then you add a blur effect to make it softer. And now you just need to link the track matte box to the main composition of the loop. By the way, you can do the same thing but with shadows. Maybe if the light is on the right, then the shadow will be on the bottom left, let's say.
Here is a quick before and after comparison.
And now you can parent those layers to the main composition and press P and Shift S, or you can also go to the layer settings and go to transform. Then you can animate the position on the scale and make it look as if she was actually running very fast and going away from the camera. The great thing about loops is that you can reuse them in multiple shots. I've used this one 3 times in the intro of my short film. First when the camera follows her, then again when the camera stops and she runs away from it, and lastly when she vanishes. Also, if you're planning to reuse loops for different shots, I encourage you to make them quite large. This way you can scale them up and down without losing quality. For example here, I've animated a large close-up of their heads, so I can just scale them down and reuse them for the wide shot. By the way, to animate the hair, I've used a free script made by Anthony Possebon, AFP Hair Rig. You just need to add some points with the puppet tool, click on the script, and automatically it'll create some control settings for you to tweak, like the amplitude or the frequency of the wind. If you also add in a wave warp effect, you'll get a great hair animation, all in After Effects. For this shot I've used a loop as well, but adding a bit of complexity to it. I've stopped the loop right when their legs are open by playing with the keyframes, and then made it continue once they've gone across the trunk. As they are running, the legs spread quite a lot and gives you the illusion that they are jumping when you pause the loop, but actually it's just a running loop. I didn't draw any jumps. So once again, I've saved time, as it only took me 1 or 2 minutes maybe of shifting a couple of keyframes around to get the result I needed, without wasting time drawing any extra jumping animation. As you can see, by using the power of loops, you can skip a lot of drawing time and make a manual slow process a bit more automatic and quick. Let's jump into the second technique. Animating complex backgrounds using compositing or 3D software is the best way to go. In this clip from Spirited Away, you can see how detailed and smooth the background is compared to the characters running. That's because they used a 3D software to project the handmade drawings into 3D models, according to its digital animation director Mitsunori Katayama. This way you can add a camera into the 3D scene and animate it in any way you'd like. Just imagine how difficult it would be to draw every single detail on the walls and the floor, frame by frame, considering the change of perspective as the camera moves forward, and to do it accurately to make the animation smooth. Same on these clips from Studio Ghibli films. This camera traveling from left to right following the characters can be done in After Effects easily. You don't need to draw every single frame. The closer the layers are to the camera, the faster they'll appear to move. That's how parallax works in real life too. If you are on a train and look through the window, you'll notice how fast things appear to move when they are close to you, whereas clouds or mountains far away will appear to move slowly. Now I'll show you how you can do this in After Effects. First, we'll go through the foundation with simple solid layers, just so it's easy for you to understand.
First, we create a new camera and a null object and make it 3D. And then we link the camera to the null object. We create a new solid layer for the floor and make it 3D. Then rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Move it down and scale it up quite a lot in the y-axis. Then duplicate the layer to create the left wall. Change its color. Rotate it by 90 degrees in the y-axis and move it up and to the left. Then duplicate this wall layer and move it to the right to make the right wall. Now we just create a new blue solid layer for the sky, push it back far away from the camera, and scale it up quite a lot. Now if we go to the custom view 1, you can see that we've created a 3D scene and a camera that can travel through it. Now we can animate the position of the camera It can start back here and move forward like this. And you can also animate the rotation of the camera to look around.
Now, if you take this foundation but use your own drawings instead of these boring solid layers, that's when it gets interesting. In this scene from my short film, we've got this character walking the street, and then we switch to a first-person point of view of her. I've created a 3D scene in After Effects, and I put a camera right where the character would be. I linked it to a 3D null object, and then I animated the position and the rotation of this null object to simulate that she's walking through this 3D scene and looking up at the shop sign. Using After Effects saves you time from drawing and gives you much more freedom as you have more control on the camera and the set. If you're not happy with the animation, you can always shift some keyframes around instead of redrawing the whole thing again. And same with this clip. I just drew very large landscape layers and put them into the 3D space, then created a camera and made it trail horizontally from left to right, following the characters. There are bushes and trees in the foreground, close to the camera, the characters running in the center of the frame, with a grass layer for the floor, and finally some more bushes in the background. As you can see, the bushes and the trees in the foreground move much faster because they are closer to the camera, as we've seen before. By the way, before we finish with the background section, I would like to mention this AI tool that I found out recently. It's called Depth, and basically what it does is it creates 3D environments from 2D images. You just have to import your 2D image, and then it creates a GLB file that you can import into After Effects. It can be a very good tool for people who don't have 3D skills, for example, as you can create a 3D environment very quickly. Obviously, it's not going to be very detailed, or the depth is not going to be as good as it should, but for some subtle camera movements, it works very well. Because of its complexity, some animators in the past used to work exclusively on special effects, such as fire, water, smoke. They had a very good understanding of physics to be able to draw these effects frame by frame. They understood how the shapes and the brightness vary throughout the animation, how fast or slow some bits need to be at a certain point, and how they interact with the world around them. As you can see, drawing these effects smoothly takes an insane amount of time and skill, but luckily we've got After Effects and 3D software to make our lives a bit easier. In this video clip from the band Gorillaz, we can see quite a lot of special effects, such as smoke or fog, rocks crashing, rain, and some light rays. All these effects seem to be animated in a 2D compositing software, except the rocks that have been animated in a 3D program. You can see how the shape of this rock is repeated throughout the clip. Probably they used a 3D particle system or even made a 3D model exploding into little rocks, and then repeated the animation throughout the 3D scene as the camera travels through it backwards. I've done something similar on this clip, but using After Effects. I've used the shatter effect under the simulation category to break the water down into pieces, as if it was glass. This way I can play with the number of pieces that I need and their physics, all with a few clicks, without drawing every single frame for every single one of these pieces. I would say that one of the most important tools used for simulations are particle systems. They work very well for things like rain or snow. In After Effects, the best plugin would be Trapcode Particular from Maxon, but you can also use built-in effects like Particle System or Particle World. Basically, a particle system generates a group of particles and animates them according to some specific physics that you can adjust. So, for example, if you wanted to create snow, you could change the particle type to faded sphere and the animation to twirly. Then change the parameters of the producer so the particles come from everywhere. You can do this by increasing the size of the producer and moving it up a bit. Then make sure the particles are visible for a few seconds, 4 seconds in this case. And then if you want the wind to come from the right and the particles go from right to left, you can change the gravity X vector to -1. And then you add a tint effect to make the particles white, like snow. If they are moving too fast, you can increase the resistance to make them move slower. This clip from Marvel's Spider-Man is a very good example of how using After Effects will save you a lot of time. Just look at how detailed the digital effect on the door is, and think about how crazy it would be to draw all of that manually. Making it in After Effects, it's much easier than it seems. To do this, I've created a fractal noise and changed the noise type to block. And then animated the brightness and evolution to make the particles move and disappear. To create the hexagon grid, I've created an hexagon using the shape tool,
and then used a repeater to repeat it horizontally, and then another repeater to repeat that row vertically. Then I've created another fractal noise and animated the brightness and evolution again, and used this as a track matte layer for the hexagon grid, but using the Luma Matte option to take into account just the brightness, not the alpha channel. So when the fractal noise is white, the grid will be visible, and then it'll disappear once it turns black. For the reveal transition, you have to create a particle system with squares that explode and expand, filling the screen. Now, if you use this particle system as a track matte to reveal the main door with some glows and the digital effect, this is the result you get. Now you create a red wall, like in the Spider-Man example, and make everything 3D, and that's it. I wouldn't be surprised if they used After Effects for this, to be honest, it looks quite similar.
Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't draw special effects or that learning the physics is not important anymore. I'm just saying that we can make the most of these modern tools to speed up the process a lot. Or we could also combine frame-by-frame animation with these modern tools to create a different look, like I've done here. For this shot, I've drawn a water splash animation in Photoshop, as I explained to you earlier during the loop section, and I've combined that with some other After Effects layers, like the water rings made with circular shapes and adding some waves, the water surface using a fractal noise but changing the first two settings to strings and spline, and the bubbles, which is a particle system like the ones we've seen before. And this works very well for animations that are looking too perfect or modern, because adding that subtle frame-by-frame animation makes it feel more handmade and traditional. So as you can see, 2D animation has evolved quite a lot. It's not only about frame-by-frame animation, but also about modern and automatic tools that not only allow you to work faster and more efficiently, but also to create new types of animations and films. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you find the video useful, and you have any questions or thoughts, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to respond as soon as I can. See you around.